Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 95 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I'm your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom, Rabbit, Come Spoon Me, Haggis.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Love to you all. You are my Valentines.
Aww. Second, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew, it's Suntory time, Zumwalt. What he said. Third, filmmaker.
Sounded Russian.
Third, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions. He wanted to put me on Prozac, and now he's madly in love with his laptop, Rowald.
For relaxing times, make it Suntory time.
Fourth, writer, actor, and director, Kyle. I don't think I like massage anymore. Fine.
Konnichiwa, Cinesmackers, Ichiban.
Very nice.
That's Japanese. Hey, that's 2 foreign language introductions tonight. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Look what romance movies bring out in us. Did I just call them romance movies?
Because Russian is definitely the romance language.
Well, romance language.
You know, yeah.
The soothing sounds of Japanese.
It's better than German. German is definitely not a romance language.
Kyle!
All right. Let's just poke the buggy.
Ladies and gentlemen, faded movie stars and personal letter pen people, welcome to the main event. Tonight, 2 tales of unconventional affection go heart to heart on the battlefield of love. Who will find everlasting love and who is headed for Dumpsville? In the first corner, from 2003, written and directed by Sofia Coppola, starring Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson, and Giovanni Ribisi. Lost in Translation! In the second corner, from 2013, written and directed by Spike Jones, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Scarlett Johansson, and Amy Adams. Her!
Okay. Her versus Lost in Translation. Let's get the party started with our first round, which is writing.
This is actually really interesting. I don't know if we realized how much these 2 movies overlap and like the stories that led up to them. And I'm sure Mike's got a bunch of trivia on it.
I do.
But the first movie, Lost in Translation, is a movie by Sofia Coppola about her time, allegedly semi-autobiographical, that she spent in Tokyo with Spike Jones, who went on 10 years later to make Her, starring Scarlett Johansson in both of them.
Now I don't have any trivia.
Right. That was your trivia?
Yes.
Your trivia sucks. So
Trivia done.
So what's interesting for me, I mean, the stories there's all that overlap, but there's really not a whole lot that really overlaps the themes in them, except that Scarlett Johansson is unattainable. But we all knew that. And I'm looking forward to the final film in this trilogy, the Black Widow movie they're working on. So I think one of the things that I found most interesting in the stories, I don't know. I don't know. I think both of them are really, really great movies. But Her is a little bit more direct in what they're doing. It's got a little bit of a almost a gimmickiness to it, in that, and it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm just using this for a lack of my shitty vocabulary. But it's, what if someone fell in love with AI? And Lost in Translation is a really great look at people's relationships. It's one of those movies that's really fun to watch because it's interesting to watch how people interact. And Sofia Coppola does a really, really great job of interacting and making people interact as they do in real life. I feel like there's those odd pauses and talking over each other. She does a really, really nice job with that kind of direction. So, but we're not talking about direction. We're talking about, so that was about this, like the dialogue. So I don't know. Somebody else have something you want to cut in here so I can kind of get my shit together?
Well, I thought both of these, I really enjoyed the writing on both of these. And they do, I think they really capture kind of the intimacies of relationships. And they both do it very well, and maybe slightly different ways, but there is overlap, definitely. And whether the relationship is with another human or with an artificial intelligence, it really captures those intricacies and kind of the emotions and the humanness of it. But I think one of my problems was I felt like I really enjoyed the writing in Her. And I really like those kinds of things that are kind of subtle science fiction, where it's kind of reaching out slightly into the future and like what could happen with these technologies and that kind of thing. But I felt like they didn't really know how to end it. I felt like the ending to me was a little bit unsatisfying, and I don't know. I felt like they didn't know how to wrap up the story entirely. But I don't know. Did anybody else feel that with Her?
I felt that way with both of them, actually. I mean, it felt like both of them kind of lacked an ending, but
it's true. Yeah, I mean, for Lost in Translation, I agree that the ending is more ambiguous, and then obviously it has a very famous ending with the whisper and not knowing what he said to her and that kind of thing. But I also felt like I identified with that because I felt like that's kind of a real life situation where you have these relationships that kind of just trail off or end and they never really resolve. But I felt like maybe in that instance, maybe we fill in our own endings for that.
Sure. I don't think we're not expressly told in the end if Joaquin Phoenix and Amy Adams' characters will get together, but they share a very human moment at the end, which I think maybe is kind of the point of that. I know it's a bit ambiguous, but after the relationships they've been in, and I guess that speaks to the commonality of these movies, I found it were about unconventional relationships or relationships that have some sort of a major obstacle where there's obviously an attraction, a love of some sort, but there is some insurmountable or giant obstacle between them. In Lost in Translation, obviously one character being married and probably 40 years older than the other. Mm-hmm. But there's a definite attraction and this thought of what could be if it was a different time, if they were different people, because they seem to be who the other needs at that time. And in Her, the problem of not having a physical body is quite difficult to overcome. But in the end, they're very human moments at the end where it's kind of messy and isn't full of closure and doesn't wrap everything up in a neat bow. And I think that's kind of what life is. There's not always a clear answer. and you don't always know what's next. Maybe that's what they were getting at with the endings they picked.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I felt that both of them really ended with more of a real life, like their life. We've looked in the window and we've watched this moment in each of their lives in both of these movies, and then that time was done and their lives continued. We don't know exactly the next chapter that happened. We don't know the next thing that may or may not have occurred with a relationship or not a relationship, and it was just their life. And I feel like that's more realistic to who we are as people, because there are people that come and go, they stay in a window and then they disappear, and they may go on and live their life, and you may never know exactly what happened to them, and vice versa. And so I felt like they really did a good job of making it more personal in that sense.
Yeah, and it's tough to write in a way that, and I'll say 4, counting the AI character and her. But I mean, how do you care about these 4 characters in the span of 2 hours so that there's emotional detachment when the movie ends, and that you want to know more about what happens to them? But because it's hard for movies like this to grab onto the audience and make them pay attention and become emotionally invested in the short amount of time you have with them. But both of these movies do it so well.
Yeah, I felt the writing for the characters was enough that you felt empathy for at least the main characters, if not their love interests, and kind of all around their family groups, friend groups, to where you actually felt something for them, whether or not it lingered or you were like, oh, that was cool and neat. But the fact that you felt belonged and kind of in their world for that short amount of time, I felt was well done in that writing, because there's some moments where there's just really some soft touches, or there are glances or facial expressions, or even like words that are spoken that you can really feel that empathy and that passion that should or should not exist.
Yeah, a lot of that is down to the acting, how they treat each other and treat the material. Some of it too is world building. In her, the setting, plays an important part. This being in the near future makes things a little more plausible to believe some of the things you're being told. And in Lost in Translation, the being a stranger in a strange land and feeling like you're isolated and on an island really adds to the drama in the story. So I think they got it right on a lot of different fronts.
And and maybe that speaks to them being able to write about their experiences, but I would say that I think that's what maybe is the connection that everyone potentially could have with both of these movies, is that everyone has been in that position, whether you've moved away or you've gone on a trip or you've broken up with a really bad relationship or got divorced or whatever, to where you feel lost, you feel empty, and you're just kind of drifting in life. And I think that there's some realism there. And it could be very dramatic. Again, something as simple or as crazy as a divorce, or something as, simple as you moved away and you have to start a new school and you just feel kind of like a nobody again. I think everybody's had those times. And I think that makes it more relatable to touch not just the characters, but what's actually happening in those scenes or in the movie in general, I say. But
yeah, I think the characters are very well rounded, and they're deep enough for us to identify with, and they have very kind of relatable flaws. They all seem very genuine and human. And maybe some of that plays into the performances as well, which we'll get into, in the next round. But I think a lot of that starts with the writing, is creating these characters that we can identify with, especially in stories like these. If we're writing an Avengers movie, we may not have to worry about that so much. We can write something that's a little more kind of unbelievable and fantastical. But for something like this, where it's an intimate portrait of these people's lives, and really kind of a display of their emotions, on the screen. I think that's really important to put those relatable human aspects in there, and they've done a great job of it.
So for me, the thing that struck me the most about these two movies, and I don't think this has happened before on About, but on paper, when you read the 1-2 line synopsis of these two movies, they sound awful. Like both of these movies walk such a tightrope between. I mean, it would not take much for either of these two movies to be really bad. I mean, a guy falls in love with his phone, and a 19-year-old falls in love with this 53-year-old, and it's like not falls in love, but they're this, the line between romance and friends, and it's between these two people who are nowhere near each other in age, and it's really startling to me how well they do what they do, and do it so successfully. And for me, when we go forward and we start voting on these things, for me, it's going to be what I think was the key in the success of this.
I
each
agree,
of them.
I agree with you with the description. It's pretty close to being a Lifetime movie. They just need to add like in depth or, sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah. We'll get to the trivia in a second.
I mean, I'm just saying, you
6:30 on Lifetime.
you read it and you're like, that must be put out by the Asylum,
Yeah, like it would be like they sound like awful movies. Like
Yes.
why would you want to watch this? And they're, and I I mean obviously I'd seen them not too long. I've probably seen each of these within the last year or two, and then rewatched them for tonight. And damn it all, if it was just like, oh yeah, I like these movies, and then I watched both of them, and I was like, God dang it, I love these two movies. They are just, God damn it, why can't I direct something this good? And they're simple. I mean, there's not a lot of special effects or anything. It's not. I mean, they do so much with so little on both of them, And Bill Murray, I mean, he's a special effect unto himself.
Yeah. Performances are really important for sure in both of these.
All
Yeah.
right.
I would say that when you have something, I mean, a lot of times you look at a movie or you go to a movie or you watch a movie or you just review even a movie that it's easy to take you out of reality. And I think these movies were written to actually be placed in reality. So it's, again, you're watching somebody else's life for a short amount of time to kind of get a view of other people's, I don't know, it almost felt like you're watching a reality show almost, because it wasn't a distraction from real life. It was like, this is potentially real life. And I thought, I don't know, I liked that the most out of both of these films when you watch them, because they feel more real than, like you said, like, a superhero movie or something where that takes you away from reality. These, I think, bring you closer to it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, and it's one of those things that it makes you feel connected more with other people because you realize that they've had similar experiences. Sometimes you want that escape. You want to go watch, a Marvel movie, a superhero movie, or like Indiana Jones or something. But other times it really kind of connects you with other people, knowing that, hey, I've had those experiences. Similar things have happened to me. I've had those feelings. I'm glad I'm not alone. And I think both of these movies kind of, touch on those things for us, that everyday people can really identify with these things, even though in the case of her, he's kind of forging a relationship with something that's, arguably not real. But they still did a really great job of building that, building the plausibility of that and making that something that we can identify with. So, I think, both of them make us feel human.
Wait, Indiana Jones isn't real?
I wish.
Okay.
All right. On that note, let's put it to a vote, Tom.
I'm doing mine on the basis of acting, and I gotta give it to Joaquin Phoenix. I think he pretty much delivered the entire movie, so her.
All right. Kyle.
I'm also going to go with her.
Gabe.
Well, like I said before, I had a little bit of a problem with the ending of her. I felt like it and maybe on another watching I might get it better, but I felt like it was unresolved a little bit. So I'm going to go with Lost in Translation.
All right, Andrew.
Even though I believe that both of these movies were written very well, I felt Lost in Translation was more realistic, and her was further on that science fiction, or I don't know, dangerous road. So Lost in Translation for me.
Okie dokie. As Tom already stole part of my trivia, I'll just repeat it. Sofia Coppola wrote a lot of the film based on her life. The character of John, Giovanni Ribisi, was loosely based on her then husband, Spike Jonze. Rumor has it that the Anna Faris character, Kelly, was supposedly Cameron Diaz, with whom Spike Jonze worked with on Being John Malkovich, though Coppola denied the connection in an Entertainment Weekly interview. When Spike Jonze wrote the first draft of her, he didn't know the title of the what the title of the movie was, and was getting ready to FedEx it. Holy crap, this is a run-on sentence. Getting ready to FedEx it to a couple people to read. He put Untitled Rick Howard Project on the cover. It then went out to Spike's agent, Warner Brothers, and then from that point on, for a year and a half, every email, every contract was regarding Untitled Rick Howard Project, and no one knew who Rick Howard was. Rick Howard is one of 4 partners in Girl Skateboards with Spike Jonze. Spike has said he would drive up to the studio, the security guard would stop him and would say, "I'm with Rick Howard." The security guard would say, "You're with Rick Howard? Okay, go on."
Wow.
That's weird.
That's actually pretty damn funny, I thought. So let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna try not to talk too much on this, but I think both these movies are fantastically acted. I love Scarlett Johansson. I have liked her for a long time, but I love her performance in both of these movies. And I am not I've not seen a lot of Joaquin Phoenix movies, but I think he did a phenomenal job in her, especially when you consider he usually has no one to act opposite. He's only responding to either written dialogue or a recording of a voice, which seems like it would be incredibly tough. But I think he holds the frame, does it admirably. I think he's wonderful in that movie. And some of his more visceral moments, the one that really got me is when he's on the stairs at the subway and he's having that conversation with her about how many other people she's talked to and how many other people she's in love with. That's one of those moments in romance movies that always strikes me, because invariably in a lot of relationships you have those conversations about people's pasts and what they've done, and sometimes they're very hard and gripping. The worst one for me I've ever seen is a movie called Closer. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, with Clive Owen and Julia Roberts. There's a heartbreaking scene in that when they discuss that. But man, I really don't have much to say about the acting in these movies that's bad. I enjoyed all of it from start to finish. Even Chris Pratt's goofy. I mean, he's very much kind of like Andy Dwyer from Parks and Rec in this movie, but Amy Adams is always amazing. She's great even in a really small part. I thought Scarlett Johansson's voice acting was excellent. I really enjoyed it. She had a perfect voice to be this character. I had read originally that the movie was done with Samantha Morton doing the voice, and then they went in and redid it with Scarlett Johansson. So I'm not sure.
There goes more trivia.
Ah, shit. I'm sorry.
We're having trivia tonight.
I like Samantha Morton a lot, but Scarlett Johansson, I think, was perfect for that role. I thought her voice was a very sultry, mature voice for such a young person. And that just came across. She was bubbly and effervescent and serious when she needed to be. And I thought her was incredibly well acted.
And you would think that it would be bad news not to show Scarlett Johansson, because she's so easy on the eye. Yeah, but
you watch your tongue.
It worked. I mean, they definitely got away with it. She, and like you said, she even just her voice was very charming and engaging, and so
she has a very intriguing voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it almost felt like she was actually on set with them the whole time, acting next to Joaquin. I mean, I guess that's the way.
And I
I
wondered how they
yeah.
did that. If somebody was actually there for him to kind of act
Yeah.
with or not, because the timing, I would think the timing of it would be important too.
Yeah.
Well,
Because some of those
Samantha
things are
Morton.
kind of long takes.
Sorry, Samantha Morton was there, if I
She
remember
was
correctly.
there.
Yes.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Okay.
So huge shout out to Samantha Morton for holding up her end of that, even though she didn't make the final cut of the film.
Yeah.
Well,
geez.
in what I found, Spike Jonze found that some of the audio was bad on her end, so he approached her and suggested that they get Scarlett Johansson to be the voice, and she was okay with that.
Wow,
So,
Well, that's good.
yeah,
really cool.
kind of neat.
Did Samantha Morton get a credit of any kind?
Let me see.
I'm not sure.
I would say that acting wise, that Scarlett Johansson maybe is a little better in Lost in Translation because she wears less pants.
Hey-o.
Okay.
Well, you don't know that. You don't know that for
overall,
sure.
but
Well, that's true. The only thing
I'll text her and ask.
the only thing I was gonna
She's right
that
here.
I wanted to point out with the acting was I felt in both movies that the chemistry between at least Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson and Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson was just so amazing. Like those 4 or 3, I guess, people in opposite of each other seems like a very odd togetherness, but they played off this amazing chemistry, one that was more of a direct love interest compared to one that was more of a love sexual tension kind of thing between Murray, and you would never think about putting those kind of people together, and yet they did such a great job playing against each other and for each other. And it just it's amazing what they did with what was written and what they were, the story they were telling, in such an odd pairings in both movies. So I felt that was, to the actors, man, that's awesome. I mean, that takes a lot of work to pull that magic that it's natural. It just felt right. It was relaxing. It didn't feel forced. I don't know. I enjoyed that part of
there was definitely very plausible chemistry.
Yeah.
Between them in both.
Yeah, it
films.
didn't feel shoehorned or unbelievable. And I think part of that too is Bill Murray can act much younger than he is. He's a bit goofy, can be a bit immature, and go for the laughs and stuff like that. And Scarlett Johansson appears much more mature and wise than, I think she was 23 or something like that when this movie came out.
Yeah.
So she can just, I don't know.
She
She might have been
19.
even younger.
Yeah, she was 19.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
So she just seems older. I don't know.
Yeah.
She looks young, but she seems more mature and more world wise and things like that. Smarter, not so immature. But Bill Murray can play more immature to kind of make them seem closer in age.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kudos to casting on that.
Yeah.
By the
And I
way,
have to-
Samantha Morton is credited as an associate producer on the film.
Oh,
Wow, that's good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hey,
And I think we definitely have to give kudos to Bill Murray. And I've always found it interesting how I feel like a lot of comedic actors often translate well into serious roles. And I think sometimes that comedic acting transcends dramatic acting, and that in order to be a good comedian, you have to be a good dramatic actor. And so a lot of comedians fall easily into the drama pieces. I think, certain comedians have done a really good job with it. I think Bill Murray, I think he's made a career of that, of understated comedy and kind of more dramatic roles. I mean, because he definitely brings comedy to this, but I would consider this a more dramatic role. I think, Jim Carrey is actually pretty good at dramatic roles. And you think of him as just over the top goofy all the time, but he can do the dramatic roles.
Absolutely.
Who else? There was another one that I thought of. But at any rate, I think a lot of comedians really kind of transcend the comedy part and are good dramatic actors. And Bill Murray in this case is a great example of that. And I don't know that I'm a huge fan of Joaquin Phoenix, but I thought he was fantastic in this.
Yeah.
In Her. Sorry, excuse me.
You have the same problem with him as you do with Denzel. I got you.
No, I think he was fantastic.
I don't like guys who grow mustaches. That's like the commonality I can think of between them.
Maybe, yeah, it's weird. He don't
like mustaches.
The mustache kind of worked. It wasn't very kind of pedophile creepy in this. A lot of times when people have just a mustache, it comes across as kind of a little off.
Don't know.
But
I don't know if directing is we're still in acting, aren't we? Shit. I was gonna say I don't know the appropriate place, probably directing or maybe an overall, but the aesthetic of the movie Her, the way the world looks, the coloring, the cinematography is probably more directing, but I just found it fascinating. It's not the type of cinematography I'm normally drawn to, but I thought it was just beautiful, and the way the actors move through the world just was fascinating to me. Same with Lost in Translation. They inhabit these dark spaces and then these, bright, noisy spaces that seem uncomfortable. They do so well in those situations, like playing up those emotions. I really enjoyed that. I
thought that, the scenes when they're, when the two of them are hanging out and they're kind of, running around Tokyo with Charlie Brown and in Lost in Translation, I thought, those scenes, they had this really nice balance of the awkwardness of the two of them being in a foreign land, but being very comfortable around each other. And it was weird because, I was in my 20s at one point, and I just watching them, I remember nights like that where you would just go out and hang out with friends and you're just like, yeah, this place kind of sucks. Let's move on to the next place. And they did such a great job of capturing that, the chemistry they had with their environments at the time. Sometimes it was an awkward place and they moved on to something else, and then they're doing karaoke and they're very much at home there. And I just, I think the two of them just did an amazing job. So
okay, I have a question about that. Maybe we should save this for later, but I don't want to forget it. What in Lost in Translation, they were at some kind of bar or something, and then one of their friends kind of got in an argument with a bartender. And then he started shooting something. He had kind of a gun thing, but obviously it wasn't real. What was that? Does anybody have any idea what that was?
It's in Mike's trivia, right?
Is it?
No.
What?
Oh. I thought it might have been like a BB gun or an airsoft gun or something like that.
They're heated BBs.
Is that really what it was?
They're heated
because
BBs.
it looked like tracer bullets or whatever. There was like some visible thing coming out at the end.
They get hot. The BBs get hot, and
but they didn't seem too worried about it. The guy's shooting at them, and I knew it wasn't like a real gun, but I was like, they didn't seem too concerned about it. Yeah, but it was weird. I didn't know what that was.
I don't want to get hit by a hot BB. That sounds awful.
No, that sounds painful.
Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway, I was just curious about that. That doesn't really have anything to do with acting, but
and we can't help you, so.
Yeah, they didn't act too scared.
Yeah.
So
in that situation, it was
the
kind
BB,
of like silly.
The BB gun was an airsoft MP5 with a tracer adapter firing plastic phospholuminescent BBs.
There you go.
Oh, well, you get hit by one of those if they're pretty.
Yeah.
Ooh, pretty.
Yeah.
And the black light makes them glow.
Beautiful pain.
Aw.
The only other I don't know, maybe we're not done, but I was going to say that the other thing I really thought was interesting with acting wise is Scarlett Johansson is, the femme fatale, the sexy girl that they put on screen, which I'm not going to argue because she is, but the fact that in Her, it's purely her voice. Like, she makes herself sexy just by talking. And that I think that takes an actor. I mean, that's a lot of work to be able to pull that off. That's not an easy task, to just sound sexy and do it well throughout the entire movie. That speaks volumes for how she can act, because you can see her face when she talks. You can see her expressions in her, mouth and her eyes, but you're not actually physically seeing her. And I thought that's pretty incredible, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Her voice performance was great. And again, I thought, like, oh, that's a risk, just doing her voice, but it worked.
Well, that's just like in V for Vendetta. What's his name? Mr. Smith.
Hugo
Weaving acting with a mask on, and he has to use his voice, right? Like, it's all about the voice.
But he's got a really interesting, fantastic voice.
Yeah,
and his delivery is really unique.
And I like those things, if they're done right, and you like, they're almost meta. You're like, that's really brave and smart, because it works. Like, you could have shown her face, but you didn't, and that's even kind of more admirable that it works.
And with an AI thing, they could have tried to create some sort of, some sort of visualization or animation of her, whether it be like something on the screen where you see a face, or a hologram, or a robotic kind of thing. They could have done that, because I think when it comes to AI type things, they're really trying to do that to make it feel more human. But they didn't have to rely on that for this role, and because of Scarlett Johansson's performance in part, but also because of the writing. They didn't have to rely on us being able to see her. That didn't matter. And I think it's really interesting how it brings kind of a focus to the differences between emotional and physical intimacy. And we can get into that later.
That's a good point.
Yeah. We can talk about that later in later categories, because
there are definitely and there are definitely people that have voices that are more distinct, I should say, than others. Morgan Freeman, for example,
sure.
James Earl Jones, they have very distinct voices that they're just really good at voice acting, and I would say that she excels, that she is definitely in that category. She has a very great voice for different scenarios, I guess, but in this one specifically, she's a good voice actor that really fits up with some of the greats, in my opinion. But
and it's interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. She's in Isle of Dogs as well. She plays a character in Isle of Dogs. But the interesting thing there is I don't think she necessarily stands out there, but I think that's part of the direction of Isle of Dogs.
Yeah.
Because the delivery for a lot of those things is very kind of deadpan in Isle of Dogs. It's very kind of low key, understated, not a lot of high emotion in Isle of Dogs. So I think that's direction, not her performance necessarily there. But
I think, you're talking about like between her and like Hugo Weaving. So Hugo Weaving had an established career, and so him doing V for Vendetta was more of kind of like a little bit of a branching out, but I don't think there's any doubt that he couldn't pull it off. In fact, when people said this is what he does in this movie, I'm sure everybody's like, oh, that'll be great. Whereas Scarlett Johansson had a series of films, and a lot of her popularity was based on her looks. And then she does Her, where she's like, I'm going to take the looks out of the equation, and I'm going to be in this movie and just use my voice. And I think it elevated her status as like a quality actress that's not getting by just on her looks, that suddenly people took notice that she's actually really, really great at what she does. And it's not just, how she looks. It's actually, this is a talent thing for her. And I think it was a risky move, but it was just brilliant, because she was able to, not only take the challenge, but step up to it. And then, and now she's, A-list actress, and She can be in any movie she wants.
She crushed it.
She did.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a similar situation as to Tom Cruise. He relied on his looks to a certain degree for a long time, but then he did Vanilla Sky, where he through a good portion of the movie he's kind of deformed or covering his face, and I think for me anyway that was one of the roles where I thought, oh, he's actually a good actor. Mm-hmm. He's not just getting by on being a charming pretty boy, in all of these movies. He's actually pretty good in this. Well, and go ahead.
Fun fact: Tom Cruise can't grow a mustache.
I was going to say, in Mission Impossible, you don't see his face a lot either. So,
is it because of his center tooth? Does that throw off his mustache growing capability?
Yes, and that's why Gabe likes him. Is he can't grow a mustache.
Right.
Scientology won't let him.
That's right.
maybe
it takes too many thetans to grow that mustache.
When your clear facial hair cannot find you.
So I've been
we respect it, and we still think it's okay to be a Scientologist.
So I've been going through just some of the lead actors and actresses, some of their films that they've done like way back when they first started. Scarlett Johansson was in Home Alone 3.
Okay.
Like what?
She was the weakest Kevin McAllister, though, in my opinion. I mean, I didn't buy her at all, but
and she was in The Horse Whisperer, which I didn't even know that either. But
I didn't know that. I thought that was a real horse. She's good, isn't she?
That's where she got really her voice acting talent. But Joaquin Phoenix, there's one that like popped out on me, and it was from 1986, and I loved this movie as a kid, Space Camp. He was in Space Camp.
Yes, he was.
And after that, he was in Rooskies. Oh, man, sorry. I Murder, She Wrote.
I was on Murder, She Wrote.
Parenthood, Six Pack. He was in a TV movie.
It was the
version
TV,
of Six Pack.
yeah. Yep.
That's not the Kenny Rogers one, you bastards.
I got all excited too. I was like, "Oh, Six Pack!"
I love Six Pack. We had 6 kids in our family, so it really spoke to us. My dad did not drive a race car.
A monster truck, but not a race car.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of going through it, and I'm like, really, Home Alone 3, huh? All right.
Just got to start somewhere.
That's right. She's doing way better than I am. All right, let's put it to a vote, boys. Kyle.
Oh boy. Oh, I gotta give it to her.
Well, give it to her. Gabe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. The performances in both these movies are just fantastic. This is a hard choice. I think I'm going to give it to her as well, in part because of Joaquin Phoenix's performance in carrying pretty much the whole movie almost by himself.
All right. Andrew?
I'm actually also going to give it to her just because, again, all the points that we've made about the voice acting and Joaquin Phoenix being able to handle a movie almost solely. So, her.
All right. Tom?
Okay, so back in writing, when you asked me, I said I gave it to her because Joaquin Phoenix carried the entire movie, which is a dumb thing to say at the end of the writing category. So I got my notes mixed up, and I was giving you the reason for acting and writing. So I'm going to give it to her, but I'm going to give it to her because the idea is so ludicrous that a guy falls in love with his phone, and the writing is just absolutely sells it. So that's why her gets it for the acting category, and I'm all caught up now, and I can continue on to the directing category where I won't screw things up.
Okay, so you voted for her. I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
You can just switch those, Mike. You can edit that and just switch his votes.
I hadn't thought about it. Yeah.
Just
Mike,
cut
edit
it.
some more. That's good.
And you can edit Kyle's stuff about the the directing and stuff. You can move that to here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get right on
Let's
that.
just talk randomly about categories and then let Mike edit it.
Splice it all together.
Boy, are
Could
you
you put
going
my-
to
We
be
got time for that,
surprised?
right, Mike? No problem.
And go ahead, put my recommendation where you introduced me at the beginning. I want to look like I'm on top of my game.
Tom's going for extra credit. Amy Adams said writer-director Spike Jonze would essentially lock her and Joaquin Phoenix in a room together for an hour or two every other day and make them talk to each other. Jones did this so the actors could get to know each other better. Adams credits this for her and Phoenix's close friendship still to this day. Or whenever that trivia was written. In 1999, Bill Murray replaced his talent agency with an automated voice mailbox that can be reached with an 800 number he gives out sparingly. Sofia Coppola reportedly left hundreds of messages on Murray's mailbox before he finally called back to discuss her offer to cast him as the star. Now, another bit of trivia in there was she wrote that movie for him. And if he was not going to be in it, she would never make it.
Wow.
She flat out said that.
Yeah, and he was perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, for that part.
So why do out of all of us filmmakers and such, why do we not have that number?
Yeah.
I want to call that.
Well, he
number.
gives it out
Yeah.
sparingly.
Yeah, sparingly.
I don't know how she got it.
That's an internet search.
Well,
'cause
could be because her
Tom-
last name is Ford Coppola.
Coppola, yeah.
Maybe.
Tom, can you ask Scarlett Johansson if she has that number? Just turn to her and ask her if she has it.
She said no. No, she does not have that number.
Oh, I would think that she would still be friends with Bill Murray as well, but
She said she is friends with Bill Murray, but he
She-
changed the number recently. So
I
That's
see.
weird. Scarlett Johansson's talking to me too.
I want
Now
whatever,
She's an OS.
Off.
I want whatever drugs you guys are on.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I've fallen in an alternate dimension I'm not aware of.
Because I'm
My-
texting her right now.
Oh
So
my
she can't
God.
be with you guys.
Oh well, that's
It's
what her
official.
phone
I'm the
keeps
last
buzzing.
sane man on earth.
Her phone keeps going off. Mike, stop.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, we're dirty pigs. All right, let's move on to the third round, which is directing.
Yeah. Well, both of these are just fantastically directed films, but they're different in their approaches. I felt like I had seen Lost in Translation before. I think I saw it in the theater when it came out, and it was interesting to rewatch it because there were parts of it I didn't remember. I have to give her credit for the opening shot in Lost in Translation. Maybe one of the best opening shots of a film ever. I was immediately engaged. Actually, I saw a Reddit thread that said Lost in Translation, best opening shot ever. And that was it. That's what they discussed.
It's pretty close.
Yeah. But one of the things that struck me upon rewatching it is that she really kind of explores kind of the spaces in between. She doesn't worry about letting the camera linger a little bit. And the sound work in most of the scenes is very subtle and quiet. And she's exploring these kind of intimate moments. A lot of it is about their relationship, but they show these people alone a lot too. And so I think she's also exploring what we do in our time alone. And I really liked how there's these spaces to just let those things kind of like, let that moment fill that space. Let the environment kind of, fill up with that emotion and fill up with the sights and sounds that are happening there without a lot of dialogue. That's one of the things I like. There's dialogue for sure, but there's not a lot of, excessive dialogue in Lost in Translation. It's very to the point and very, quiet dialogue in most cases. But her, I thought I liked the direction of her because of how it approaches kind of that topic, that almost sci-fi topic of like what happens when there are robots and artificial intelligence and people fall for them. What are the social implications of that? Because I think at one point there's one little scene which I think is really interesting in it, and a couple of scenes where they talk about it, where he's saying he's in love with an OS, and I think he's expecting kind of people to like a backlash to that. He's expecting people to be disgusted or disturbed by the fact that he's in love with an OS, but they're kind of not, because Amy Adams is like, oh yeah, when Charles or whatever his name left, he left his OS behind, and I kind of, got a connection with the OS. And then Chris Pratt's character finally has a real girlfriend, and he invites Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson to dinner, and he's like, but she's an OS, and they're like, cool, and it's no big deal. And there's a social, he's expecting kind of like people to be disturbed by it, but there's a social acceptance that's happening, because it's happening to a lot of people. And they show a lot of people talking to something or another. They're walking around, they're out in public, they're with other human beings, but they're engaged with something else. And are they talking to another human, or are they talking to an artificial intelligence? We don't know. But it doesn't really matter, because now it's becoming more and more acceptable. And I really like how that's, how they approach that. And again, I'll stop now, but and let Kyle talk about these things, because I think Kyle was talking about the color, and that's one of the things I really appreciated and really noticed in her is the color palette. It was very distinct, it was kind of unique, and it was very consistent throughout. And I'm not sure what the colors meant. I'm not sure I've had enough time to process what those colors meant exactly, but I really liked that about it. The color palette throughout. So
it had a very distinct art style to it. Lots of pinks and reds, greens. A very different color palette than what I'm used to. But I found it really beautiful to watch, see that world. And the scenes of him walking outside, I'm not sure where they shot it. I think they say it takes place in L.A. I'm not sure if that's really L.A. because there are some signs that have what looks like Japanese or Chinese writing on them from time to time.
You are correct, sir.
Okay. But man, it is just beautiful. The outdoor shots even, where he's walking on sort of that elevated walkway around and he's going in and out of these buildings. I just thought the cinematography, and there's a lot of really great camera movement, really beautiful shots, and the art direction was just gorgeous. Lost in Translation, I think, is beautiful too for a different reason, because it plays with so many contrasts of the darkness and the light. And really, Scarlett Johansson is, obviously, we've already talked about, very attractive. They make her look very soft and young, but not naive. And I think that's just great. And they're not afraid to show kind of Bill Murray in some harsh lights that kind of show and accentuate his age, with the exception of him being on the Suntory set. He's never really dolled up. I do like when he comes back and he's still got the clips on the back of his suit, though. I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, and that was some subtle humor that I was like, oh, that's nice, that's fun.
Yeah.
And it was really subtle.
Not sure how much of that is in the script and how much of that is actors just doing that, but letting people make those kinds of decisions and adding in those little touches and things that make the world feel real and keep your immersion, I think is really the sign of a very well directed movie. If you never take your attention off the movie or what's going on, you're interested in the story the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and in regards to that too, she makes a statement later about like seeing him like one of the first times or whatever, and liking his eyeliner. She said the clear eyeliner was great or whatever. But I think that also says a little bit more about his character in that moment. he wanted out of there. He wanted out of that photo shoot. He wanted out of there so badly.
Yeah.
That you feel like he just, like, as soon as it was done, he just left.
Went
Like,
right to the bar.
Yeah, it went
Yeah.
straight to the bar to drink.
Yeah.
You know, and he still had the clips and makeup and all of that on. And you know, I think that's kind of a fun detail on that.
Just real quick, most of the city backgrounds, especially the ones featuring God, I can't talk tonight. Skyscrapers are actually filmed in Shanghai.
Really? In Her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few parts where he's walking through a building where I saw in like exit signs, some of the signs had either Chinese or Japanese writing. So I must have filmed some.
Did they talk in context of the film? Did they talk about where they are? I don't remember.
I think they're supposed to be on LA because he lives in the Beverly Wilshire
Yes.
apartments or something like that. And I think they say he writes for something in LA.
Oh,
Or he used to work for the LA Times or something like that. I can't remember. But
As far as Spike Jonze said that he was inspired by the colors at Jamba Juice for the color palette.
that kind of diminishes it a little bit for me. But
I did want
works.
to mention
He
the
elevated
cinematographer.
Jamba Juice.
The cinematographer for Her is the same cinematographer that did Dunkirk.
Yeah.
I'd
never heard of him.
He's got some chops. I mean, I thought he really
Yeah.
the movie was beautifully shot.
Even with the foreign languages on stuff, though, under the impression that Her is set sometime in the future, you could put it as we've merged culture enough to where Japanese and Spanish and everything else is kind of a norm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could pull it out from that. I'm not saying that's what he was going for, but
Yeah, definitely. I agree. That seems like a very likely kind of future prediction. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always liked about Blade Runner, too, is that, you know, that it's this real mashup of cultures that it predicts in the future. And I thought it predicted it fairly, in a way, accurately. It maybe happened faster in the film than it's happening in real life, but I think it's actually happening.
I think it was. I think it was incredible how prescient Her was in the. I mean, it was only 6 years ago, but to look forward and see people have like an emotional connection to their phones. That Spike Jonze kind of saw the road that we were on.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, tell me it's going to get better before it gets worse, because it's ridiculous how just kind of, like I said, emotionally attached we are to these things, and the neurons that fire off when we haven't looked at it long enough. And it's remarkable, some of the same reactions we have to our loved ones we have when we're looking at our phone,
right?
And it's so easy to replace it and come between us, and it's right. I don't even know how to turn the ship around at this point.
Well, I can't remember who said it, but someone said, now that we have smartphones, no one is bored anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so you don't just sit there and think about things like you would when you were bored, like before you had something that had you connected to everything.
Right.
Actually,
that might be a bad
imagination.
Yeah, developing an imagination, just kind of pondering life, or noticing little things around you. How a lot of that has just vanished.
Yeah, you have to plan quiet moments.
Yes.
You don't get them like for free. Most of the time is busy and loud and things are going on. You have to take time to be quiet and still.
Yeah.
Well, and
very different.
You have to turn your phone off in a sense to be able to have those moments that we took for granted in a non-technological advanced age where we didn't have, the internet on our hip.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of social pressure with it too, because if you do turn off your phone and you're not available, you're not connected for any given amount of time, people are like, what, why, where are you? Pick up your phone, answer your text. Why did you not text me back immediately?
Right.
You get that fear of missing out too. What am I not being invited to? What am I not hearing about people's lives?
Right.
It's such a new development. Like we've created our own new neuroses.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like,
but
we're
it's, I mean,
so
but
well
it's
connected.
But yeah, I know it's interesting because I mean, like, I'm more connected to the people outside my home than I could have ever been. But I'm less connected to those in my home, and it's
Right.
like, is that good? Is it bad? I mean, I'm in contact with people from high school and college that I probably wouldn't have been if I didn't have this device, and that's good. Having that connection to other people, but
But at what cost?
at what cost? So I mean, it's a balance, I suppose. I mean, hopefully it balances more towards in your house. So.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on Kyle's comments. I think Gabe also meant the colors and the way it was shot. I have to agree that it is beautifully shot. There's some of the most gorgeous cinematography in both of these movies. Just some of the pans, some of the way they even line up a shot. They break the thirds. Those single moments when they're by themselves. I can remember the one scene where Bill Murray gets into the bathtub before he's interrupted from the phone call from his wife, and it's just this I don't know, this moment where you just kind of see this broken yet strong man all at the same time, and he's so vulnerable as he sits down in that bathtub, and it's just an amazing moment that you can see in that movie. And I also I really enjoyed the fact that they really put a lot of those scenes very close. Like there weren't a lot of shots where it was like super wide, long ways away. You see the characters. Everything was you feel like you're a part of their life. Again, looking through that window, you're actually being there to be able to experience and be a part. And I really liked I loved that really about both of those movies. It really had that more of a connection, I guess. I also thought it was interesting. There was a lot of interesting cuts that like we would cut to a scene that was already going on. It wasn't like we cut to the scene and then there were cuts where Lost in Translation, they cut from Bill Murray to Scarlett Johansson in her room, and her husband's packing his stuff, and he's in the middle of a conversation, and they just cut to him, and he's like in the middle of dialogue. I was like, well, that, and it just felt like how kind of your mind works, how life works. You just kind of all of a sudden fall into these moments. I really enjoy the cinematography. Is probably one of my favorite things out of both of these movies. And the colors, screw you guys. But
Oh, forgot you're colorblind. I'm sorry.
But with that being said, I do want to point out that because of that, I see these worlds differently than everybody else. I do see the contrast though, and I think it's very fascinating in her as the movie starts off. It's very bright. There's a lot of grays and a lot of nice shadowing, and as the movie progresses, it actually the lighting gets darker and the scenes get more closed in with the darkness. And I thought that was really fascinating. Even when you end up with Amy Adams at the very well, it's not at the very end, but when she's in the office and she's talking and going over her stuff in that little tiny computer room, and there's just the one lamp. And I found that interesting that there's lots of brightness and lots of, sparklers and all this magic light, and it slowly dims as the movie continues on. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to help tell the story. Lost in Translation, I think it's the world that they built, being in, and maybe not built, because I honestly would believe that Tokyo's like that. It's just light and crazy. It's Las Vegas 24/7 times 10,000 all the time. And if you're famous, you see your face everywhere and in lights, and then over on a truck, and then over on some neon, and then you walk down a hall and everyone knows who you are. And I can totally see that fast pacedness and how they light. And I would agree. They definitely did a nice job of always kind of doing the 50s thing with Scarlett Johansson, where they kind of always made her soft and luscious, and then Bill was just, it's Bill, man. Especially the karaoke bar that they went to. I thought that scene was really fascinating, how they jumped back and forth and really cut in between, and the way the lighting just shifted. And when she's performing, it's just this angelic glow, and when he's performing, he's just kind of, he's there, enjoying the moment. So I see it a little bit differently, but I still have to agree with what you mean by how the lighting definitely helps push that story.
Well, I agree with Andrew there with Lost in Translation. There's something very voyeuristic about the film.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and don't get me wrong, her is very well shot, but Lost in Translation feels more voyeuristic, like you're just spying on these people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
Way to say it.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to add to directing? No? All right.
No.
I have a quick question for Gabe, considering this is his favorite film.
Okay.
Which one?
Gabe.
Gotta be talking about Blade Runner.
Yes.
Oh.
Did you notice something when Theo was walking down the street? Like when they show him walking down the streets in Her?
Well, it's not immediately jumping out at me, so
I
must
caught
not
it
have.
like it stuck out to me like a sore thumb. And then I found it. I was like, no. And I found it in the trivia when I was looking at it today. A sign can be seen behind Theo while walking down the streets that reads, quote, Brunner, styled in the iconic Blade Runner font.
Brunner, really?
Brunner,
No,
yes.
no, I didn't notice that. No, I didn't see it. Normally, I would. You would think that would be something that would stand
Yep.
out to me, but I didn't.
That's all. You flunked.
I flunked.
So you
I
don't get
failed.
to vote.
I'm a failure.
You don't get to vote.
You're not
so,
allowed, you're
Andrew,
not allowed to like Blade Runner.
What was the prize?
nothing.
Oh.
You get to vote. What's your vote, Gabe?
Well, these are both very competently directed. Yeah, tough. I'm gonna go with Spike Jonze and Her.
All right. Andrew.
I am actually going to go with Lost in Translation.
All right. Tom?
Going back to my point where, either of these movies could have really been awful. In this instance, I feel the directing is what saved Lost in Translation. So I'll go Lost in Translation.
All right. And Kyle.
I'm also going to go with Lost in Translation.
Cool. Francis Ford Coppola, Sofia Coppola's father, urged her to shoot the movie in high definition video because, quote unquote, it's the future. But she chose film. She chose film because film feels more romantic.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm a proponent of video technology because of some of the things that it provides as far as like convenience and those kinds of things. But for a long time there was an argument between like which looks better and aesthetically, that kind of thing. But it was something that I noticed very definitely in Lost in Translation when I was watching it. It was clearly shot on film.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you could see the grain. But it does, the one thing that it does do is add that romanticism to the film for sure. It creates this situation where it doesn't seem entirely, it's not like a documentary. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem entirely real. There is some sort of separation between reality and the film itself.
And it's the film actually being shot on film. Does that help with, as Mike put it, the voyeuristic, that looking through a window more than if it would have been shot digitally?
Maybe. And I'm not sure that the technology, at the time would have been good enough to shoot on video. I think it would have cheapened it a little bit. And so I'm glad she went with film,
Yeah.
honestly.
Stuck in the editing process with his early 150-minute cut of Her, Spike Jonze asked Steven Soderbergh to edit it down with his instincts. Soderbergh came back within 24 hours with a 90-minute cut, which helped Jonze make the final version, which ran 126 minutes.
Yeah, I felt, with Lost in Translation, I felt like it lingered, but it didn't seem slow to me. It did, it wasn't like fast paced, but the moments where it lingered, it made sense to do so. There were times when I felt like maybe Her was slightly long, just a little bit.
Yeah.
I watched it with,
but I thought the pacing was good, but I thought, it's creeping up on being too long. That definitely could have been a problem.
I watched these movies with Heather, and we watched Her first, and then after Lost in Translation, she told me she thought Lost in Translation was too long. And I said, it's 15 minutes shorter than Her.
That's interesting.
She's like, I didn't know.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, it definitely does. Its pacing is very intentionally kind of slow. It's clear that was a choice for that.
Now, I was going through I forgot to add this in. I always like to look at the director's work. And of course, Sofia Coppola did The Virgin Suicides, Lost in Translation, Marie Antoinette, and let's see, Somewhere, The Bling Ring, A Very Merry Christmas she worked on. And then she also did quite a few music videos with like the White Stripes and let's see, where else was it? Kevin Shields. But just real quick, I was going through, goodness gracious, I can't, Spike Jonze's list, and just some of the, he's done a ton of music videos. Weezer, Buddy Holly, which is great. Beastie Boys, Sabotage, which I kept...
Awesome.
Oh, really? He directed that?
One of the
episode.
greatest.
Yes.
That one's fantastic.
One of the greatest music videos.
Tenacious D, Wonder Boy.
Oh, no way.
Yes. And by far my favorite music video that he's ever done, Fatboy Slim, Weapon of Choice.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I have a DVD that's just his music videos.
I know.
Really?
I have a copy as well.
You do?
It's
Really?
Yeah, it's always nice to pop it in because they're all just great.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to look for that. That's cool.
And I think that's where he gets a lot of his creative choices, since he has this small, a smaller template to work on. Like he's got to be very sight oriented with a story, right? Like he needs to be very visual, and I think that shows in Her. And I'm not saying that Sofia Coppola does not know how to frame a shot, but that's her crying right now if you can't hear it. I've totally lost my where I was going with that, but I just think he's very visual in his thinking, right? And there's been a lot of very visual directors come out of the music video world to have life in feature films.
Yeah, it's not easy to shoot a music video. That's
Best one ever, right? The guy who the original crossover, the greatest music video / feature film director ever, Mick G. That guy. Didn't he do one at the Charlie's Angels? I mean,
he did. Which
He did Terminator 4 also.
Oh boy,
Terminator Genesis.
Terminator Salvation. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I like number 4. So
I don't remember Salvation.
wait, which one's is Salvation?
the Christian Bale one.
Oh, that movie's terrible.
Where he had the
No,
break
it's not.
or the
No,
meltdown.
it's actually pretty good. After Rise of the Machines, it's actually pretty
it's the
all right,
humanoid one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
To the pacing in Lost in Translation. I mean, so I know, being filmmakers, you guys get called out on jobs. And so there's times where you're at a hotel for, days on end and you're away from your family. Lost in Translation does a really great job of that. Just like being in a hotel room in a strange city and like the stuff that you do and around the hotel and at the hotel bar and stuff. I thought that was one of the things that Sofia Coppola captured really, really
Yes.
well. And not even just being in Japan. I mean, you could be in Fremont, Nebraska, and it's that same thing where it's like, you're lost. And I thought that was something that, yeah, really came through and kind of spoke to me on that almost. And it was, I think, to somebody that hasn't experienced that, I think they could look at it and be like, this is really boring. Nothing's happening. Or like, you don't realize how accurate this is.
Yeah, Tom,
the
I
bar of the room.
totally agree with you on that. I saw this 2004, 2005, and then just recently for the podcast, and watching it the second time now, I'm like, wow, I totally get it.
Yeah,
Because you're right. Like you get sent somewhere for 2 weeks. You're either on set or you're in this hotel room and you're trying to figure out what to do.
mm-hmm.
And he goes down and he like overly runs on the elliptical. He swims. He has that awkward moment in the sauna with guys he doesn't know, and he's just trying to like chill out. He shaves with all the pure white, all the toiletries that are all white, and then picks up the phone and gets shaving cream all over it and just doesn't care. He's like, just send up the package, dude. I'm not coming to get it.
Yeah, I mean, when I first watched it, I'm like, oh my God, this is boring. And Tom, you just nailed it on the head. I couldn't put my finger on why I was enjoying it so much more now than I did then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. All right, let's move on to our fourth and final round overall.
I'm going to hit on the basics of the things that I saw for overall, and those may or may not spawn discussion. Feel free to jump in, and then I'll probably jump in on the most, I guess, maybe the most controversial part of how I felt with watching one of these movies. So overall, I definitely want to say that it's fascinating to see the comparisons. I saw Her a while ago, watch it again, and watched Lost in Translation, basically the two of them back to back. And so seeing a lot of the similarities, how the characters are both, really lonely. They're unhappy with their lives, but yet they have good lives. They just don't realize that it's right in front of them. Bill Murray's success. Joaquin Phoenix has great success with his writing of his Hallmark cards, in a lesser way of saying. So there was a lot of that. The ungettable female or romantic partner that is totally obtainable but not obtainable at the same time, which definitely poses so much strong sexual tension in both of these movies. And you can just feel it between the characters, which definitely goes to acting and the writing, as we've talked about before. But that sexual tension and those moments where it's like, do I touch her? Do I not touch her? I think of the one first time that Bill Murray kind of crossed that line just a hair is when they were laying in bed next to each other, completely platonically, and then he reaches down and grabs her foot as they fall asleep. And I thought that was such an impactful moment in that scene and in the movie of there is that tension there that they both want to cross, because she didn't move. She didn't, be like, that wasn't expecting that. It was just comfortable. And I also want to talk about that. There were lots of scenes without no dialogue. I know we've mentioned that, but that really comes across in both movies. Now, once Joaquin Phoenix gets his the OS and he actually is talking with the OS, there's obviously a lot more dialogue there. But there's a lot of moments where it's just a person being in life. And the dialogue itself is very natural. It's very real feeling. I think we touched on that a little bit, so we don't really have to get deep into that. So yeah, I mean, overall, both of these movies they stand the test of time very easily. They're relatable no matter where you are in life. But as Mike maybe inadvertently said, they really change as you age, as you experience, as you have different things that actually happen to you in life. These movies can mean something completely different to you. They can be more impactful, less impactful, change your views on stuff. And I think that really says something for both movies, and not just the story that they're trying to tell, but how people can relate and actually put themselves in these positions, or even just be like, I've seen my friend go through this, or I've been through this, and it really has a really passionate impact for the viewer. And I don't think anybody could watch either one of these movies and not walk away with a reaction. I've always said that a great film isn't necessarily whether people loved your movie or not. It's whether they walked away feeling something. Because whether they hated it, they loved it, they made them cry, it made them think of an old fling, it made them think of their family or their friends. If they walked away with an emotion that they took away because of this movie made them feel, that to me makes a great movie over just a movie that's fun to watch. And I felt that both of these movies could do that for anybody, regardless what that emotion may be. So yeah, overall we've covered so much. I don't want to over talk specific points when it comes to the overall. So I don't know, anybody, throw something out there. Tell me I'm stupid. It's cool.
No,
before we get into the deepness, I guess, because the next part of my spiel is going to be, I think I'm going to light a fire. I'll just say that.
Uh-oh. Well, I really liked a lot of those points you made. I think I'm probably going to butcher this, but in this world of no fact checking, I'll just go with it. I think I once heard someone say Pablo Picasso. It was a quote by Picasso that said, everybody knows art isn't truth. Art is a lie that reveals the truth. So we watch these fake relationships and it stirs something real in us about the real experiences we've had. And I think you're right. Eliciting an emotion is such a powerful aspect of film. You can transport someone back in time, forward in time, make them feel like a different person, make them look at the world in a different way. And that's the power of story. Part of it also, like you were talking about, I think sometimes we don't think about where we're at in our lives when we see a piece of art, and that time and setting is an ingredient in how we feel about it. You could watch the funniest movie ever made, but if it's the same day you found out your wife's leaving you, it's not going to be a good experience. There's just so much nuance to how we consume art. And I think that's a really interesting point about it eliciting emotions, whether you like it or hate it, or it makes you think, or makes you ponder, or makes you sad or happy. I think all of those are valid and really interesting aspects of the power of storytelling. I think these movies both have that in spades, that ability to touch those human things, even though they're works of fiction put on the screen and, obviously just off camera are 50 people with lights and scripts and water, and you forget that for 2 hours and you're sucked into this world and you're invested in this story and these characters. I think that's beautiful.
Very good point. Just real quick, I fact-checked you, Kyle. Apparently, I need to drink more when I'm recording.
Thanks, Internet Nazi.
Oh, I'd like to know.
How do you remember?
I thought it was Picasso that said, like, art isn't truth, but art is a lie that reveals the truth. Something like that.
You are very close, and I'm very impressed. We all know that art is not truth. Art is a lie that makes us realize truth, at least the truth that is given to us to understand. The artist must know the manner whereby to convince others of the truthfulness of his lies. I'm very impressed, Kyle. That's a really good poll.
That's spot on.
Well done.
I've always loved that quote. I think it's fascinating. I think it's so true.
It is. It's very true.
But a lie at the same time.
Right.
But
that is, the
reveals
power of telling a story. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think you could make an argument here that both of these filmmakers kind of took the easy way out. That they kind of, they went with love stories. It's something everybody knows, something everybody can identify with. But the difference is they really pulled them off. They really did a great job with these stories, and they made them extremely relatable. That we definitely do identify with these films. I think I do anyway with both of them. The desire to have that kind of meaningful relationship in your life, and how hard it is to find and keep it. And I think they've both done a really fantastic job doing that, hitting that human part of that. So.
And I think Robin Williams said that best when he said, "Language invented for one reason, to woo women."
Mm-hmm.
Because you look true. At it as, yes, they are displaying a story about something that is, in a sense, easy because everybody has had love experiences, whether they're good or bad. But think of all the other things in art, from music to TV to paintings, that are inspired by love, whether it's with another person, an animal, life. And love is such a strong emotion that people use it, and it is scattered very heavily throughout every part of every culture through the entire world, and how we look at ourselves, our social status, our friend status, however we visualize that. Love is an interesting centerpiece for all of those things. I mean, think of some of the pop songs, some of the, even some of the heavy metal, opera, poetry, all those things. Someone in those areas have pulled love at one point. Now they may have evolved since then, but someone's always put out a love album or a love picture or whatnot. And so I think that holds dear, considering the fact that on top of all of that, they used a little bit of their own lives and their own personal being, and their emotion probably spilled a little bit into the paper as they were developing this story to tell on screen, that allowed that love, in a sense, to come out, to tell that story. And that makes it easier too. Whew, that was a lot. Sorry.
I got nothing. Kyle and Angie just boxed it up and put it up on the shelf. It was like, we're done.
Yep.
We're put it on the top shelf so Tom can't reach it.
Oh,
I can't disagree with either one of you. So
I'll hold you up, Tom, so you can get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things we
come on, Gabe. We're almost done with the podcast.
I know, but one thing we often talk about in this category is music. Do you guys have any thoughts on the music in these films? Did it stand out?
Only memorable to me was the karaoke scenes.
Yeah,
I can't really think of too much else.
I was kind of thinking about that too, Gabe, because you and I are usually the ones to discuss this, and they're not very memorable to me. Either one.
Yeah, but I think they're. I think the music works though.
Well, it works.
It doesn't necessarily stand out, but it's effective in accompanying the storytelling.
Yeah, doesn't that say something for the movie though, that the movie the music was actually a part of the movie instead of being something you're like, the music actually drove this movie. It was there. We know it was there, and if it wasn't there, it would be weird.
Yeah.
So it was enough that it accompanied the story instead of actually driving the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it. Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily stood out. It's not like some kind of John Williams kind of score, or Lalo Schifrin, um, 70s,
Jazz flute.
almost
Yeah,
porno music sounding kind of thing that stood out to us. It would be interesting to see how it ages. I don't think the music in Lost in Translation aged poorly. I didn't go, oh my God, that's such an old song or something. But,
It didn't make me want to run out to a jazz bar, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just wondering if anybody had any thoughts on the music.
Nope.
This was the Lost in Translation was the movie that like made me go out and find Elvis Costello. So the song that Bill Murray sings at the karaoke bar, I wasn't exposed. I was What's So Funny About Love and Understanding and Peace, Love and Understanding, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty good song. So I seeked out. I was never like exposed to Elvis Costello as a kid growing up, and so like this movie was like the line that was like, hey, check this guy out. And now, like 12 albums later, I'm like a huge fan. And I'm a huge fan of his, and that's not even like in my top 10 of his songs now. And it's so that's all I got to add.
The things karaoke can do for a life.
I know. He wasn't even singing the song.
And I would also like to point out really quick that this whole time I have literally been drinking Suntory whiskey.
Really?
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Not the nice 17-year stuff that they had. I think it was 17-year that I saw on the label in the movie, but it's called Suntory Toki, and you can get it in town. And Japanese whiskeys are very interesting. Actually, they don't have to play by a lot of the rules that other regions play by. Like the Kentucky bourbons or Scotch whiskeys and those kinds of things. So they can do some pretty interesting things.
They're less oaky. Is that true?
Yeah, and they have some very interesting flavors to them. I kind of like the hibiki. If you can get it, if you can find it, hibiki is quite interesting. So I just thought I would mention that it's Suntory time here at my place.
Very nice.
Cool.
All right, let's put it to a vote, boys.
Well, did you not? You don't.
Andrew's got a controversial point.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
No,
Do I need more
okay.
whiskey?
You might.
All right.
So, because I have a movie making is my life. Unfortunately, I have a real job, so that way I can keep the lights on and be able to watch these fabulous movies that we talk about. What I do for a living is I write code. I do actually a lot with AI. And I would say that, yes, her brought definitely a feeling out in me, more of, I wouldn't say disgust, but just to the fact of, I didn't really connect with it at all, in the sense that I don't know how it's possible for anyone to fall in love with something so artificial. It is purely algorithmic. It is something that is, in my mind, all I can think of is everything that she is doing and everything that she is evolving to do is purely an algorithm that has been taught to her, and it's not real. There's nothing real about it, and I don't understand how people can actually make an attachment to that. It's a toaster. You don't fall in love with your toaster, and I don't know if it.
Well, speak for yourself.
I might if it sounded like Scarlett Johansson.
But I guess I don't. I know that people have a relationship with their phones in the sense that they want to be able to feel connected, but to actually have an intimate relationship with something that isn't real in any way, shape, or form, and it not be a fantasy, because put fantasies aside, because obviously fantasies are fantasies, that you're actually living your life in a pure mental relationship with something that's not real, that's actually just responding to how you are and is not actually returning the feelings, is only imitating those feelings is really hard for me to fall into and be like, oh, that's really beautiful, because it's really weird in a sense to me. Because even today we have Alexa, we have Google, and they have all different types of voices. You can change in male and female. There's British, there's American, there's Japanese, there's Russian, there's all different types of dialects. And Google and Amazon have worked very hard on making their AIs very human-like and very human relatable in that sense. In fact, one of Google's big, huge goals is they want to build the computer from the Starship Enterprise, where everything is just naturally speaking, it's just a part of your life. But to actually fall in love with the machine like that is just, I guess it's very odd for me. And that's definitely a different perspective, because I'm writing this code. I am making these AIs do this kind of stuff. And it's weird to me to see someone react to it in a way that they could actually bond so emotionally, because I can bond to something but not have an emotional bond. Does that make sense? So I don't know. That was my big thing with her, that I just was like, this is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what happens if
fire?
I mean, so there's been a lot of research done on imprinting on children and, like, you know, what happens to them in their early stages. I could see a child that is exposed to, you know, computers and screens at an early age become emotionally bonded to them. And I don't know about the AI reciprocating like you're talking about, but you're welcome to come over to my house and turn off the Wii when one of my kids are playing and see if that qualifies as an emotional response. So
well, and I guess I would argue that yes, that is an emotional response, but there's a difference in saying that I'm going to spend the rest of my life, I'm totally committed to a machine,
right,
to a bunch of ones and zeros that are actually in the cloud that may not even be on a computer, that are virtually just a part of one's life. I mean, you could say a schizophrenic could fall in love with himself then, and that would be legit. And because they're developing those responses. I don't know. Like I said, I see it from a different perspective in the sense that, like I said, I'm making these kind of things happen. And I guess I'm the guy that I get to see behind the curtain, and it doesn't seem fantastic or emotional to me. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Well,
yeah, I felt like that was one of the triumphs of the movie, is that we know that it's artificial intelligence, and you know, it doesn't hurt that it's voiced by Scarlett Johansson, and it's very relatable and human. You know, but I think that was the triumph of it, because, you know, I had the same feeling going in a little bit, you know, like, oh, how are they going to make it convincing that a relatively normal human being is going to actually fall for this? But, you know, he was in an emotionally vulnerable place, and this AI, it was probably programmed to say exactly the right thing at the right time. And, you know, I can see where people might, you know, kind of fall for that, or find that comforting in some way. Maybe they wouldn't fall in love with it, but they would definitely kind of like find that something that they could fall back on. You know, when humans don't say the right things at the right times, and they don't listen when they should be listening, because, you know, that's a lot of what it was about. One of the things that bothered me, though, and one thing that maybe they didn't care to or have time to address, was privacy concerns. Because you're telling this AI all of these extremely intimate things about you, and that information is going somewhere. You know,
and that AI could share that with the 500,000 other people that she's a part of.
Exactly.
Which
and the
again, company
that she was developed by. You know, I think about things like, you know, Alexa and, you know, Siri and, you know, Google's Home Assistant and that kind of stuff. And Samsung TVs, you know, they're listening and they're recording and they're keeping that stuff.
Gabe.
What?
You know who won't tell on you? Your toaster.
My toaster? I love my toaster.
I tell my toaster everything.
But
I tell my microwave everything. Although I hear microwaves are not trustworthy.
So
they're kind of snarky.
In comparison, though, they have cars now that will automatically stop for you because they react better than you. Does that mean that you could love your car?
Speak for yourself.
If it prevented me from dying, I might love my car. Yeah.
I don't know how you want to classify it, a mental illness or disorder, but there are some people who are physically attracted to inanimate objects.
That's true.
People who have what they feel are real emotional attachments to things like roller coasters, the Eiffel Tower, things like that. There are some interesting documentaries about that. In this postmodern world, it seems like there is such a reliance and integration with technology that they become part of your everyday life to a certain point that the lines are blurred. You talk to them like you talk to a person, like you talk to a human. And even though Joaquin Phoenix has some what I would consider stable and good human interactions in this movie, most of the communication you see throughout the film is done with a computer of some sort. So I just wonder if in that world they're portraying privacy isn't an issue, they all understand the consequences of it, or something's happened where like there's laws against any of the sharing or whatever. But I don't think that I understand what you're saying, that if we made a movie about today where someone fell in love with Alexa, that'd be a major thing for us to think about. But it's kind of never presented in this future world, so it's just kind of taken for granted that it's okay. And one of the things that struck me was when he walks out the front door of his apartment one day and he sees that ad for the new OS. It's like people running and looking scared and lost. And there's like one person in the crowd that looks calm in each shot. And I'm wondering if that's sort of a psychological thing and it's playing on him feeling lost after his divorce and kind of striving for that calm and understanding. And it's an ad that's pitching this new OS that's supposed to help him sort his life out. It's supposed to grow and learn and adapt even past its original programming. And that's what's intriguing. So I wonder if it's almost like he got hooked by the advertising that brought him into this. And I'd have to rewatch it, but.
And that's, again, kind of I don't know, tip your hat to the people that write these codes and do the marketing, because they are trying to play on that emotional attachment that people want. Like I said, the AI that we interact with today, comparatively to the movie is very primitive. But they have worked very hard to make it so we have an emotional attachment to what they provide and who they are. I mean, people refer to their Google Home as her and their Alexa as her. And that to me is really weird, because that personifies it as it's a living being, and it's not. And I don't know. It's just odd to me that your brain can switch that and actually make that make believe almost true. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for me in my perspective. It would be difficult for me to accept that. I mean, I think it was either Tom or Gabe earlier said that when he was invited over for dinner, and he's like, "Well, yeah, but she's an OS," and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." I would be like, "Yeah, she probably shouldn't come because she's not going to really be here." What? I don't even understand that.
We know what side of the revolution you're going to be on.
I'm going to be the one writing all the stuff to take care of everybody.
You'll be working in the silicon mills, fueling our overlords.
I'm going to be the one that's actually making you guys, mind controlled, because I'm going to be writing it and I'm going to make you do what I want. But
I, for one, welcome our robot masters.
So I don't know. Like I said, maybe it's not as controversial of a topic, but it was really a rough part of the whole premise of the movie.
That's definitely. I mean, they don't address it very heavily, but it's definitely part of the concept. Is like, how socially acceptable is this, and how plausible is it for a human to fall in love with something like that, something that's inanimate, not truly real. And you know, they don't address some of the scary stuff, I think. You know, they make it more of a romance to a certain degree.
They do a bit when he asks, how many people are you talking to? How many of them are you in love with? There's this mention that it's not a personal relationship. He's dealing with a massive thing that is interconnected to hundreds and thousands of other people.
Right. And they're starting to interact with each other as well.
Mm-hmm.
But and I guess I look at it as love is a human emotion, a human personal thing that a machine doesn't have. A machine can't love. It can be programmed to seem like it can love, but it can't love. That's a human emotion. That's a human drive. And to be able to pull yourself away and actually believe that machine actually really loves you. And you know, that scene itself was one of those things where I was like, well, duh. Did you really think it was? I mean, she's probably the voice for 500,000 other people. And then she, of course, says that, I'm in love with everybody. I'm like, yeah, duh. Because she's not you. She's not a person.
Yeah, I thought for a minute where he was having the conversation with Amy Adams and she reveals that she's kind of in a relationship with an OS as well. I thought they were going to reveal that it was exactly the same name and the same OS.
Yeah.
I thought that's what was coming. That it was going to be this illusion that it was really personal, but it really wasn't.
He mentions too, they're talking about reading a news article about people falling in love with their OS, and then he says, "Oh yeah, I guess it's really rare," and so they both kind of agree on that, and that's sort of a justification for I'm in love with my OS. They don't love everybody. Most people don't fall in love with them, so this must be special. This must be real.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a justification for an otherwise unsustainable relationship.
Right, and sometimes the OS falls in love with somebody else.
Sure. He's in a really emotionally fragile space coming off a very painful divorce, and you make a lot of justifications and you convince yourself of a lot of things to keep that illusion going, that your life is going well, that this is real, this is sustainable, you know.
Right.
It reminds me of a bad relationship where you keep lying to yourself and other people to keep the relationship going. Oh, everything's going to be fine. It'll be fine. When if you really stopped and thought about it, you'd be like, oh, this is over.
Well, and I guess I look at it as going back to the car thing. You know, I love my car because I love the things it can do for me, but I'm not in love with my car. And I think that's a huge difference because that poses that human factor, that actual emotion. There's a difference in I love this thing or this thing's amazing or I love chili cheese fries, but are you in love with that thing? Because that's where it changes over to where it's an actual human emotion.
KFC could probably be my common law wife. I mean, we have that kind of a relationship. I don't know. I'm with you.
That's why your fingers are slippery.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Those are all very good points. Crispy 3 and I are going to have a good talk tomorrow during breakfast.
I'll make sure I say hi for you because she talks to me too.
No, I said Crispy 3, my toaster.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's your toaster?
Yes.
Crispy. Your toaster's not even exclusive.
Oh,
well, no.
Toaster's sleeping around.
She pops toast up for me too, Mike. Sorry, buddy.
Son of a bitch.
Whose crumbs are these in your tray?
Well, Crispy 1 and I took a sexy shower together, and Crispy 2.
How are you alive?
Yeah, that sounds dangerous.
Well, luckily I wasn't grounded. It's very complicated to explain.
They weren't plugged in yet.
Your Facebook status says it's so much more sense.
Let's just say Crispy 2 and I got hot and heavy. Unfortunately, something happened. So overall trivia. The apartment scenes have all been filmed on location for her in order to get the best lighting conditions possible. Dutch cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema How do you say his
Yep.
last name? Yep,
Sounds
good
great.
enough. Decided to change all windows surrounding the apartment on the 34th floor. Additionally, he decided to install large mirrors on the helicopter platform of the skyscraper across the street. This
Oh my
gave him
God.
the possibility to bounce back sunlight into the apartment.
Holy
I thought
crap!
that was,
Cool.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, think of the budget for that.
Yeah. Bill Murray had a Japanese phrase book called Making Out in Japanese, in which he would go around to sushi restaurants and ask the chefs if they, quote, had a curfew or if they would mind if he, quote, used protection. He even mentioned on the Graham Norton show that he had learned a phrase along the lines of, quote, who do you think you're talking to? And would mention it to the fear of others. I love that. They cared if he used protection.
That's
All right.
awesome.
Oh yeah, we got to vote. Andrew.
I'm gonna go with Lost in Translation. I think I covered one.
Just
Obviously.
because you don't love your toaster. Tom.
Yeah.
Lost of translation.
Kyle.
I'm going to vote for her.
Because Kyle loves his toaster. Gabe.
He does. Wow, it's tough.
Remember your microwave, Gabe.
Remember the microwave. I do love my microwave. I think I'm gonna go her.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, I already did the trivia. So while I do math, let's go to our recommendations for this month. Tom, you're going to start us off.
All right, so we're 72 hours before this year's Oscar ceremony. So this will probably come out. I mean, it's going to come out after the Oscars.
Yes.
So 2 weeks ago, I said that Widows was my favorite movie of 2018. In the 2 weeks since we recorded that episode, my favorite movie of 2018 is now The Favorite. So I'm not Scarlett Johansson's not in this. It doesn't really link, but we're close to the Oscars, so I want to throw this out. But I recently watched The Favorite. It has Olivia Colman and Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz in it, and it is an absolute blast of a movie. It is so funny. It's the story basically of Queen Anne, and she has like a handler played by Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone comes into the picture, and the two of them start to curry favor with the Queen, and they do anything and everything to each other in terms of how they constantly trying to undermine each other to curry the favor of the Queen, who is a little bit off her nut a little bit, and it's just absolutely fantastic. I know that from the looks of it, it looks like a very kind of bland period piece, but the dialogue is absolutely amazing. I hope it wins for screenplay because it's my favorite screenplay in a really long time. The cinematography just completely, it's so ballsy. And a lot of times when you think of these period pieces, you're thinking of basic setups and that kind of thing. But this guy he's using whip pans and fisheye lenses, and it is such a fun movie, just from beginning to end. So I would recommend The Favorite, and I would like it to win Best Picture. I don't think it will, but it is my, for the time being, favorite movie of 2018.
Are there any zooms in it?
There are no zooms in it.
All
No.
right. It meets the Tom Haggis standard then.
Yes, Yorgos stays away from the zoom lens, but he.
All right. Kyle.
I'm going to recommend a movie I just saw not too long ago, and it is a take on romantic comedies, and it's in theaters now. It's called Isn't It Romantic? With Rebel Wilson. She has an accident and wakes up inside a world that is a romantic comedy, and it's kind of a parody of romantic comedies, and I found it funny and enjoyable and very lighthearted and just a good time. And I like Rebel Wilson. I think she's funny.
She's
For
one
sure.
of the only reasons I could bear watching that a cappella movie that my wife
It's
loves.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. My girlfriend Jill just went and saw Isn't It Romantic? And she enjoyed it too. She said, well, it's not going to win any Oscars, but it was fun.
No.
It was good.
It is fun. I think it's fun and funny. I like it.
All right. Gabe.
Well, I was having a hard time. I haven't seen a lot of movies lately, so I decided to go with another
Blade Runner?
Spike Jones. Yeah, no,
Blade Runner again.
Yep. So I'm gonna have to go
For the
with Blade Runner
95th
or-
week in a row.
or Fight Club. I did see Fight Club at Flicks just recently, and that was a fun experience seeing it on the big screen again.
Well, Gabe,
in
you're
many,
not
many
very
years.
good at this. What's the first
Yes.
rule?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Oh, fuck.
Shit. Damn it.
Sorry,
Now I
Gabe.
have to fight.
You can bleep that out, right?
Right. Okay, but
I will.
I'm gonna go with another Spike Jonze movie. Has anyone suggested being John Malkovich yet?
I don't know.
think
You're
so.
supposed to keep track of those things. So
I know
It's on the
I don't-
website.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'll check it out later.
all right.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody has, and it's a really interesting, weird, quirky movie. I actually thought, her was in some ways very kind of tame for Spike Jonze, because he's done some really interesting kind of like weird, mind-bending type things, kind of out there. And being John Malkovich is one of those. But it's a really fun, interesting movie. So if you've never seen it, take a chance on it. It's really very interesting movie.
All right, Andrew.
I'm gonna go for also an older movie that I broke out because my wife has never seen it and she needed to see it, and that is Pirate Radio. It also goes by The Boat That Rocked, are the two different titles for that film. It's based on a true story, and it's about pirate radio that was happening in the Red Sea, and how the British government tried to make it all illegal, and these people were just actually having a grand old time doing radio, and not having to follow the rules, and they did it for years, and it absolutely amazing. Philip Seymour Hoffman is in it. Bill Nighy is in it. Nick Frost. So it's a fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, it's a lot of fun to watch. The music in it is stunning, because it's all stuff they play off of the radio and 60s and 70s type music, and it's absolutely fabulous. Highly recommended. So yeah, Pirate Radio, aka The Boat That Rocked.
All right. Well, mine is a film I never thought I would see, and now I've probably seen it, I don't know, 10 times, 12 times. It's directed by Garth Jennings and Christophe Lardelet. Yeah, maybe. Written by Garth Jennings, starring Matthew McConaughey, Reese Witherspoon, Seth MacFarlane, Scarlett Johansson, John C. Reilly, Taron Egerton, and Nick Kroll and Nick Offerman. It's Sing. Liam.
ScarJo is so great in that movie.
Yeah.
Liam loves Sing, and I have to say I do enjoy a lot of the music in it. So anyway, it's an animated film about a city of humanoid animals hustling theater impresario's attempt to save his theater with a singing competition becomes grander than he anticipates, even as its finalists find that their lives will never be the same. And I find it funny that Taron Egerton does a Elton John song in that movie, and just released today was the full trailer for Rocket Man. I don't know if any of you watched it.
Isn't that's how he got that role? I thought.
I believe you are correct, but
that version of Still Standing is pretty great and Sing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the guy's got some pipes on him.
Well, and then also Elton John was in The Kingsman too.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So interesting.
He has a great part in The Kingsman too. But anyway, I've watched this movie way too many times than should be allowed. Please send help for me and my toaster. But
Matthew McConaughey is especially great in that. Like, whoever thought he'd play a koala? Like good for you, Matthew.
Good for you.
How am I going to follow
All
Dallas
right.
Buyers? I'm going to follow Dallas Buyers Club.
Well,
I'm going to do Dallas Buyers Club, and then I'm going to do Sing. So,
do you know how he got from his place to the recording studio?
no,
Lincoln. He drove a Lincoln. Tom?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say
I thought you were gonna say he was driving and he took all rights, all rights, all rights.
that's what I thought he was gonna say too. That's where I thought he was going too.
That would have been a better
Did he
joke.
Did he
Can I-
go? Yeah.
Can I make a quick supplemental suggestion? By the way,
Yeah, sure.
if anybody's gonna watch these two movies, you should sit down and watch the Luc Besson movie Lucy. So you watch Lost in Translation, then you watch Lucy, and then you watch Her, and it's a really like the plot lines follow through pretty good.
That's actually really good.
Wow. She starts in Taipei in the beginning of Lucy, and then at the end she goes. I don't ruin it for you, but she could very much wind up in a phone at the end. So
All right.
yeah,
That's
So what was the
There's
order
a
again?
trilogy
Really good.
nobody meant to make.
yeah.
What was the first one in the trilogy?
Lost in Translation,
then
Innocent
Lucy.
Girl in Tokyo, and then Lucy, and then Her.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
All right, we gotta make this a thing. We gotta make it a thing.
That's
All right,
funny.
let's poke the monkey. Find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is
Wow.
I thought this was gonna be close. When I got done watching these two, I was like, "This is
they're
gonna be a
both
tight."
really great movies.
Well, and
Well, I'll let Google know she won.
don't worry, my Alexa already heard it. When this was suggested, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll see where it goes. But yeah, very. Tom, was this you?
I don't know.
I can't remember who suggested this, but whoever did, kudos.
Yeah, this is a good one.
It's
Yeah.
probably Tom.
Agreed.
Tom always does the right thing.
Yeah, that's right. And
It's like it's the one thing I bring to the show. I can do the suggestions, but on air I really suck at it.
all right, let's go. Let's go with where maybe people can find you talking to your toaster, Tom.
People can generally find me having sex with my. I'm on Facebook. Facebook. Let's just go. I wrote something. It's gross.
No, come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
It involves Bill Murray
Yes.
and ripped stockings, and it's really bad.
Oh,
And
we
my-
never even talked about that scene.
Yeah.
Lift my stockings.
Yes.
Yeah,
Holy
so-
shit.
I'm on Facebook. Come and get me.
Kyle.
Well, I mean, if anybody's free after the show, I'll be on Night Chat. All you have to do is strangle me with the tail of a dead cat. And that was Kristen Wiig, by the way, doing that voice.
Oh,
Which
was
I
that
thought
her?
was-
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw
Yeah, I
her
thought
in
that
the
was
credits.
awesome.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I get off, David Carradine style. So let's party.
Gabe.
Oh boy.
Did I make that joke in excess?
Uh,
Too soon.
Too soon for the guy from In Excess? Come on. He choke jerked himself out of this life 30 years ago.
wow.
By the way, that's my new name for it. Choke jerking.
Wow. Okay.
Or how
I
about
got a
that
Twitter
social
handle.
media?
I got a Twitter handle now.
Joke jerkin.
I'm glad it's not the
See if that's
October
taken.
episode.
Yeah, Tom, don't register that.
Too late. Too late.
Sometimes you register a domain based on what we say.
I only do that in October. That's the October special. So
Okay, don't do chokejerk.com.
I'm pretty sure it's
.org.
taken. I'm pretty sure it's taken.
I'm checking.
Probably.
Chuck Jerk is alive and available.
Ooh.
Well, there you go.
There's Kyle's new website.
And Choke
Man.
Jerkin is also available.
If you Google choke jerkin, you get some really interesting results.
Is this some kind of like Jamaican like
No.
recipe?
apparently someone recommends something called a jerk sitter while trying to choke jerk for the first time, just in case things go wrong.
Oh, that's probably good. Yeah,
A
chaperone.
jerk sitter. Wow.
What's really sad is the very first hit on Google is choke jerkin 24/7 sports.
Wow. Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh, my stomach hurts and I have tears coming out of my eyes. Gabe, it's your turn.
I don't even want to. I don't know what to say. Okay, I guess if you want to, you can check out some of our films on onegenomeShort.com. Let's just say that.
All right, Andrew.
ArizonaInkStudios.com. You can connect to all the social medias and stuff that we're there and see all of our films and such.
All right. Well, you can find me Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the Southsider Studios stuff is up on YouTube because we're not cool and we don't have a website. But Cinesmack would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. That helps other people like you find us. It makes us happy. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Send in some emails. They've been a little light lately. You can follow Cinesmack on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. For March, we head back to the 50s with our best singing voices as Grease takes on Little Shop of Horrors. For Tom, Andrew, Gabe, Kyle, and myself, thanks for listening and go catch a flick.
Too soon?
What in
I didn't know what it was.
It's Choke Jerkin by NXS.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Oh my God. I didn't realize it was in excess at first.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I should have gone. Damn it.
Yeah.
Fuck, I should have gone with this one.
All right. Yeah, there.
This Fine Young Cannibals? What it sounds like to me. I mean,
Jesus.
In Excess'
Do you have
greatest
any-
hit is like a one-sided.
What the fuck are you talking about? They have like
20
20
minutes.
minutes. I'm looking at my iTunes right now. I've got 10 songs on here, and they're all well-known songs. Now I'm going to listen to NXS all day tomorrow.
Well, get a jerk sitter.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.